What's up? It's been a little bit, but welcome to another edition of At a Glance, the series in which I give you an appetizer, sampler, glimpse into a particular faction in 40k. The goal behind it is to help you decide if you want to look further into the Force on your own, or maybe even starting to collect the Force as well. So open the chopping block this time by viewer request is the Iron Lord Space Marine chapter, a Iron Hand successor, one of the rare official Iron Hand successors out there, and from an unknown founding. So the Iron Lords are kind of interesting. They are from an unknown founding, like I mentioned, and what we can kind of assume, however, is that the latest they were founded, you could say, is the 38th millennium, because the older fluff out there for them dates back to the 38th millennium at the very least. But you could also say that they were founded earlier than that, and then come the 30th millennium, their big claim to fame, you could say, started. So really, it would be up to you at that, in terms of that. But anyways, let's look at their color scheme first. Their color scheme is interesting. It's a bit different from a standard Space Marine color scheme. It's black armor predominantly, with thigh armor and shin armor being red. So knee pads, when they're separate armor pieces, are black, and the feet are always black, and everything else is black except for the shins and the thighs. Their chest emblem is gold. Their helmets have a stripe in them to denote company color. They use red weapons. They have red helmet lenses. They have white squad markings, and their chapter symbol is a silver gauntlet, a silver fist, basically clutching a white halo, which is probably going to be the hardest part of their armor is their symbol. So, with that said, these guys have been around for a bit. They have an example model that's pretty old, and they are also in the Insignum Astartes, which came out in 2002 originally. So they're at least 15 years old, so it's not like they were made for 5th or 6th edition specifically. The hardest part of the armor that itself, aside from the symbol, is going to probably be the helmet stripe for company color, just making it feel like crisp, clean stripes and all that. My suggestion for you there is it doesn't seem to be from the one Terminator model we have painted up for them. It doesn't seem to be something done on their Terminators. So any Terminator, you could just skip a helmet stripe. And B, you could kind of cheese it a little bit, if you will, by collecting 5th Company. 5th Company color is black, so you would have no helmet stripe. Just all black. That's another thing you could do. That's what I would do. So that's food for thought. Anyways, it's a relatively simple and effective color scheme. It's different from how the armor color is for more standard Space Marine armor color. I like it. It's not going to be for everybody, just the way it is. It's just one of those things. But I think it works out pretty well. Now, with that said, between their symbol and the color, you can make a connection to the Iron Hands that way, and you can say the red is reminiscent of their ties to the Mechanicum, even if you wanted to kind of make up a reasoning for it. But with that said, that's their color scheme. So let's look at their fluff a bit. Their fluff is sparse. It's just enough for me to do a little at a glance on, in all honesty. They are a successor of the Iron Hands, like I mentioned. We don't really know their founding, although there's speculation in the 38th millennium, although their big claim to fame started in the 30th millennium, so maybe earlier than that, who knows. They are known to have played major roles in aggressively attacking xenospecies specifically. They fought against Tau, they fought against Tyranids, Orcs. I mean, they fought against mutants and everything as well, but you could say they're specialized, if that's the way to put it, against aggressive xenospecies specifically. And that's where their claim to fame kind of comes in. Ever since the 30th millennium, their duty has been to maintain a blockade of the Grendel stars. The Grendel stars are home to the Barghesi. The Barghesi are a really dangerous, violent xenospecies. We don't have any rules for them in any type of codex necessarily. We don't have too much fluff on them at all. We do know that Dark Eldar um, like to raid the Barghesi worlds because they're really violent to take them back to use in the gladiatorial arenas in Camera. But aside from that, we don't know too much else about the Barghesi except they're extremely dangerous. And the Iron Lords are thought to have pushed them back and maintain a blockade around their home in the Grendel Stars. We don't know why they couldn't finish the job. We don't know if they were ordered to not do it. We don't know if they just spent a lot of their strength in trying to push them back and they're maintaining a blockade while rebuilding. We don't know if they're specifically waiting for the Imperium to get off their lazy bums and start focusing attention this way to bring a crusade in and take them out. We just don't know. But it's interesting food for thought and interesting plot potential, especially because of Hive Fleet Kraken. In the Second Tyrannic War, Hive Fleet Kraken shows up. Hive Fleet Kraken has tendrils. These tendril fleets go a lot of places, including the Grendel Stars. And what makes this really interesting, in my opinion, is this is a whole different way in which a Space Marine force is fighting Tyranids, in a way. It's not so much hit and run, death from 1,000 cuts, bleed them dry, make them starve, and then try and finish them off. This is a have to slam into them and fight desperate battle after desperate battle because they have to keep the Tyranid fleet away from the Grendel Stars. Xenos experts have basically surmised that you have to prevent the Tyranids from claiming any Barghesi biomass no matter the cost because the results will be very dangerous if the Tyranids absorb Barghesi and make new Tyranid bioforms from that. So it's an interesting setup where a hit and run simply won't do. They have to be aggressive and violent, and they have to basically wage pitched battles, desperate battles against the Tyranids to halt their progress towards the Grendel Stars. Now, the fluff is kind of split in two directions here. One, that this is ongoing. The other is that it's written kind of past tense like. It makes it sound like this is what they had to do and they have triumphed, but was a particularly dangerous part of their history. Either way, it's really cool and I would like more written on it. I think it would be a nice way to describe the Barghesi a bit more. It would be a nice way to give the Iron Lords more fluff and see what's going on against, Tyranids, of course. So that's a big claim to fame for the Iron Lords. Hopefully I didn't say Iron Hands throughout all this, because this is the Iron Lords chapter. But anyways, that is their big claim to fame. They have some minor other stuff, battling mutants, battling other Xenos, but this is what they're really well known for, is the blockade of the Grendel Stars and the attacking against Hive Fleet Kraken, which I think is pretty interesting, the whole setup there. So, with that said, collecting them is pretty straightforward, especially for the Codex. The regular Space Marine Codex is the way to go, because that's where the Iron Hands chapter tactics live. And then you can make use of Clan Ralkan's supplemental book as well to make them feel more Iron Handsy-like. Now, we don't really know their combat doctrine, but we have to assume it's going to be similar to their parent force, the Iron Hands. Which means we also don't know how liberal they are with bionic enhancement. We don't have any knowledge of how liberal they are. We only really know about the Sons of Medusa being pretty active with it as well. We just assume the other forces are too. So we don't really know here with the Iron Lords. But I think it would be kind of a safe assumption, and you can go with it as you will. With that said, bits and kits wise, any generic stuff from Forge and UW for Space Marines will work really well for the Iron Lords. Any Iron Hands bits that don't have the Iron Hands symbol emblazoned upon it will also work well for bionic bits and stuff like that, for example. So really, it's going to be more of how you paint them up and what other conversions you might do. Maybe make them look a bit battle worn, maybe a bit more, tech oriented or whatever the case may be. I'm sure up to you again, but pretty straightforward to collect them. Like I said, we don't really know their combat doctrine necessarily or any real beliefs of the chapter, aside from they must kill all the Xenos for the Imperium to start to know any type of peace. Basically, the only good Xenos is a dead Xenos in their eyes, and they want to make that a reality. So we know that about them, and we do know from the Death Watch RPG they have a chapter where they call the Entropic Field Generator, which is a pretty interesting set of tech that is a force field emitter that, um, fluff-wise, is favored over even the Iron Halo to protect against Barghesi. So, um, which is interesting, and it's got a pretty secret manufacturer and fluff around it. Um, Even to the Iron Lords, is a bit of a mystery. Their entropic field generator, um, but it's really interesting because basically how it works for fluff, just for fun here. Any attack passing through the field generated by the emitter is basically set upon by entropy and decay, causing, you know, let's say a Tyranid scything talon is sliced through the emitter's field, it would rot away to nothingness potentially. A bullet would disintegrate and so forth. So, really interesting concept for a field generator. Um, and that's from the Death Watch RPG specifically, but it gives us insight into the Iron Lords a little bit. So you could definitely say yes, tech would kind of be more of their thing, even though this is kind of a mystery to them. They have it. Um, at least they definitely have one of it, and it's in the Death Watch armory. They probably have more. So, anyways, that's gonna basically be it for the Iron Lords chapter. An interesting chapter with a color scheme that makes them stand out a bit. That I think is definitely deserving of more fluff. They've existed for a bit of time now, and they have a really cool plot point, blockading our star system and keeping the Terrans away from it. I find that pretty interesting. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for sticking through it. Any question, comments, or requests, leave it in the comment section. And until the next time, take it easy.